In 1996, a passenger jet crossed the Atlantic in 2 hours, 52 minutes and 59 seconds. Today, nobody can. That is the only time in the history of transport that human travel got slower and then stayed slower for decades. We are the first generation in 2 centuries to move across the world more slowly than our parents did. The aircraft was not killed by the crash. Almost everyone believes it was. The timeline does not support it. It was not killed by fuel prices either, or by empty seats, or by the aftermath of September 11th. It was killed by a single company deciding that one piece of paper was no longer worth renewing. But to understand that decision, you have to understand what this machine actually was, and it was not an airliner. It was a Cold War project that happened to sell tickets. 2 governments built it, and neither would let the other stop. On the 2nd of March, 1969, a white delta-winged aircraft lifted off from Toulouse and folded its nose downward. 7 years later, on the 21st of January, 1976, 2 of them took off at exactly the same moment. One left London for Bahrain. The other left Paris for Rio de Janeiro. Neither country would let the other go first. In service, it cruised at Mach 2.02, roughly 2,150 kilometers per hour. It flew at 60,000 feet, twice as high as everything else in the sky, above the weather and above the traffic. From that altitude, passengers could see the curvature of the Earth, and the sky above them was closer to black than blue. At that speed, friction heated the skin of the aircraft to 127 degrees Celsius. The metal expanded. In cruise, the fuselage was up to 30 centimeters longer than it had been on the ground. Crews knew it. A gap opened in the flight deck during cruise, and it closed again as the aircraft cooled. That heat was also the ceiling. It could not go faster, because faster meant the metal itself began to give way. On the 7th of February, 1996, one flew New York to London in 2 hours, 52 minutes, 59 seconds. That is the machine. Now the business, which is where every triumphant version of this story quietly stops. 16 airlines signed for it. Around 74 aircraft on order or option from almost every major carrier on Earth. Pan American Transworld, American Eastern, Braniff Continental, Lufthansa, Japan Airlines, Air India, Qantas, Sabena. If even half of those had been delivered, the program would have paid for itself and changed aviation permanently. Not one of them arrived. And the cancellations did not trickle in over a decade. They arrived in about 90 days. United walked away in November 1972. Pan American on the 31st of January 1973. Then February, Transworld, American, Eastern, Braniff, Sabena, Continental in March, Lufthansa in April, Japan Airlines that same year. Remember 3 of those names: United, American, Japan Airlines. They come back at the very end of this story. Efficient prescribed to them they home. The reason they all left in the same season was not the price of the aircraft. It was a law. Supersonic flight drags a shockwave that reaches the ground as a sound like an explosion along the entire route. In 1973, the United States banned civil supersonic flight over its own territory. That single sentence deleted the market. Because the aircraft's whole argument was time. Time only matters over long distances, and the longest ones cross continents. New York to Los Angeles, Chicago to San Francisco. Those were the routes that would have made it profitable. All of them were now illegal at speed. What remained was the ocean, and only the ocean. Two airlines were left holding it. Neither of them chose to. Both were state-owned, and both were told to fly it. The bill by then was extraordinary. In 1962, the programme was costed at £70 million. By 1976, the real figure was somewhere between 1.5 and 2.1 billion. More than 20 times over budget. To recover it, about 150 aircraft needed to sell. 14 entered service. So the two governments did the only thing left. They handed the aircraft to their airlines for almost nothing. Which is why the numbers you will read are strange. British Airways says the aircraft earned it around £500 million. That figure is real, and it is also the reason the ending of this story surprises almost everyone who hears it. Because an aircraft that made money for 27 years does not usually get retired for being unprofitable. On the 25th of July, 2001 lined up for takeoff at Charles de Gaulle, bound for New York. 5 minutes earlier, another aircraft had departed the same runway and left something behind on it. A strip of metal from one of its engines. A wear strip from a thrust reverser, earther about 40 centimetres long. It should have been stainless steel. After repeated repairs, it had been made instead from a titanium alloy. Harder, sharper. The aircraft's number 2 tyre struck it at speed and burst. Fragments of rubber hit the underside of the left wing. The wing was not punctured by the impact. What actually happened was worse and far less obvious. The fuel tank inside was full. The shock travelled through the fuel itself and burst the tank open from within. Fuel left the aircraft at around 60 kilograms per second. It ignited almost at once, and the aircraft could not climb. 109 people were on board. 4 more were on the ground. None of them survived. The investigation rewrote European certification. New rules required aircraft to survive debris thrown by their own tyres. The fleet was grounded for over a year, rebuilt with lined fuel tanks and stronger tyres, and returned to service. And then the ending arrives, and it has almost nothing to do with any of that. By early 2003, British Airways was selling under half its supersonic seats. Air France, barely 20%. That is a business problem. It is not usually a fatal one, and both airlines had survived far worse. But a certified aircraft needs a manufacturer willing to stand behind it. Without that signature, it simply cannot fly. By then, that manufacturer was Airbus. Airbus held the airworthiness certificate, and Airbus had run the numbers. Supporting 14 aging aircraft would cost around £40 million and occupy engineers it wanted on profitable lines. So in 2003, Airbus declined to support the aircraft beyond October. Not a ban, not a crash, a decision. On the 10th of April, both airlines announced retirement. Air France flew its final commercial service on the 31st of May. British Airways flew its last on the 24th of October, 2003. Then the world got slower, and stayed that way. Here is what has changed since. That 1973 ban, the one that deleted the market, is finally being dismantled. On the 30th of June, 2026, American regulators published a rule replacing it with a noise limit instead. Fly as fast as you like over land, so long as what reaches the ground stays quiet. Final rules target 2027. And the successor already has orders. United has 15. American has 20. Japan Airlines up to 20. the same three airlines that walked away in 1973. Next time, the company that invented the digital camera and buried it.